Steven Spielberg has signed a multi-year deal to provide films for Netflix, something that could give the streaming giant an edge as it works to remain the online video leader. The agreement is with Spielberg's production company, Amblin Partners, and builds off of an existing relationship after the two made last year's Oscar-nominated film, The Trial of the Chicago 7. So here to discuss how the deal could impact Netflix is Quick Take's Alex Webb, joining us from London today. Alex, thanks for being here. So let's just get right to it. Does this deal mean Netflix is guaranteed to remain the leader in the streaming? What do you make of it?
No, I don't think it is a guarantee at all. But I mean, look, it's good news for Netflix. They lack or have historically lacked sort of critical cachet. But it's also worth remembering that this does not mean that Steven Spielberg himself is going to be making several films a year for Netflix. It means his production company will make some, and they don't have a 100% record. This is also the production company, don't forget, that made Cats. So there's clearly going to be some benefit, but it's not going to be an out-and-out one.
Not an out-and-out one. Oh, wow, Alex, that was a little bit of a dig, was it? I also want to ask you, though, I mean, let's look at some of the other streaming platforms. You have Disney, which has a number of major directors over there. Amazon just signed this deal with MGM. We have HBO Max with Warner Bros. I mean, is this really significant? I mean, talk us through that.
So, in a sense, it doesn't necessarily matter whether you are significantly better than your competitors. It's whether you're good enough to ensure that you keep paying for Netflix as well as perhaps 2 or 3 other things. So which is the base layer? Netflix wants to be the base layer, and then you say, well, I'm going to get Disney Plus and HBO Max on top of that. Now, Netflix, historically, the strategy has been have a few really good things, TV shows and films that convince you to sign up, and then have enough other moderately good stuff to keep you in the ecosystem. Now, this is going to probably be somewhere in between the two, one hopes, that people sign up because they think Spielberg films, great, but equally helps build up their back catalogue with some slightly better content than maybe they have right now.
Then how should investors be reading into it, given that?
I mean, look, it's positive for investors. It isn't the sort of thing which goes, boom, Netflix, we've won the streaming battle, everyone else can go home. There's still a long way to go in that. So, I don't think we've seen a significant stock reaction today. And inevitably, the proof is in the pudding. I have to see what films come out, whether they are good, whether they attract audiences, and that's clearly when you can start making decisions on that front.
And so then, Alex, when will we actually know whether this provides a boon for Netflix? I mean, as you mentioned, this isn't going to be Spielberg directing films for the platform. It's going to be him producing as of right now. When will we actually see whether this actually pans out successfully for Netflix?
I mean, it's likely to be a few years. You usually talk about 18 months, 3 years for a production cycle, even longer for bigger films. Maybe there are things that they already have in the works. They don't yet have a distributor. Netflix ultimately would be the distributor for those things. I think, as I understand it, West Side Story, the remake of West Side Story that Spielberg's working on, that's going to get a theatrical release. So we won't see immediate benefits from this. But if he had been making West Side Story a year or 2 later, perhaps the consideration would have been a little bit different.
What do you think, Alex, this means for the Hollywood industry as well? Because as we know, I mean, Spielberg in the past has been a bit of a critic about streaming. Do you think this is showing that Hollywood is now fully coming behind the streaming platforms and their need for them?
Yeah, I think there is a certain changing of the wind or changing the direction of travel that people who had been a little bit skeptical about Netflix, if they want to be able to make the films that they want to make, maybe Netflix and HBO Max and Disney Plus are the only places they can do it. It'll be really interesting, I think, to see what happens with Christopher Nolan. He's got a development contract, as far as I understand it, with Warner Brothers. That's Warner Media, therefore HBO Max. He was adamant that Tenet, his most recent film, get a theatrical release. Didn't do brilliantly. Admittedly, it was in the middle of the lockdowns. Now, what happens with his next film, that I think will be the real indicator, and where he decides to go from there, and whether he's able to make the films that he wants to make, if they are just for a theatrical release or primarily for a theatrical release.
Yeah, that was really interesting. That's a good point, Alex, looking at Tenet for sure. That's Bloomberg Opinions. Alex Webb, thanks so much for your time, Alex. Always good to see you. Hey, thanks for watching Bloomberg Quick Take Now. Subscribe to our channel to see the biggest stories the moment they happen from around the world. And tune in to our 24/7 live stream for global news coverage, documentaries, interviews, deep dives, and shows on the stories that you care most about.